Yeah, it's good stuff. Justin, you play that Forspoken demo?
Oh, I Forspoken about it, man.
How is it? Any good?
Okay, so... okay, the way for me to describe this, when I first booted it up, they have this like montage cutscene about what's happening with it.
Yeah, okay.
And then you're just, and it's really not clear what the story is. It's just like, oh, you're thrown into this world. You want to get home. Then you're in the world.
Sure.
And
sure.
I think it's basically a gameplay demo in terms of the fact that you don't hear the story. And from that montage they showed you, it looks like there's a lot of story, but you don't get that story in what you're playing. It's very straightforward. But the combat is interesting. So where they throw you into it, you basically have parkour traversal options that you get. That when you hold down the circle button, you get like a speed boost that you run really fast, and then you kind of like automatically do these like parkour jumps over obstacles. You later get an upgrade to your parkour ability that you can kind of climb up walls for a limited time by like doing like little like wall jumps to get to the top. You can only go so far before you fall down, whatever. So my assumption is that throughout the game, you are going to be getting these varied parkour exploration abilities that you can like really run around the map really quick, like gliding, flying, all this kind of stuff, like mega jumps, super jumps, all that stuff. And I think that would drastically help it, because right now the world, it's an open world-ish game. It looks like it's like open world zones more or less that are connected by each other, and the whole demo is one of the zones that you get.
Okay.
And there are like random objectives throughout it, like explore this ancient artifact, or defeat this enemy in this old town, or climb up this hard-to-reach building to get an upgrade. And they're so spread out on this massive map, and it's really, at this point, not the most fun to traverse to all those different points. And I think the kind of a good game to compare it to would be Infamous, if you've ever played Infamous. Specifically, was that the one on the PS4 that came out? It was like a launch title for it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I did not
Last
play that
Light?
one.
I think it's Last Light, Infamous, Last Light, whatever it was. Second Son.
Yeah.
Some of the traversal stuff can be like that, except you're in more of like a fantasy world with like fantasy-esque creatures and goblins and stags that are attacking you. I literally, for about 5 minutes, just was fighting a horde of alligators. I don't know if I got to a point where they were just spawning in randomly, but I probably ended up killing like 45 alligators in one little area.
Okay. Is it fun? Like, is the combat fun?
So the traversal itself could be fun. And it's like one of those like gameplay like slices that in the slice, what I could do, if that was it, would get boring. The combat itself, I think, is going to be potentially the same way in which you keep unlocking new and different abilities. So basically, you start off using your character's powers. I think her name's Freya powers or something like that. And her powers are basically like purple magic, which is like projectiles and earth-based stuff. And like her base attack is to like shoot things out of her hand, like little like almost like Iron Man pellets at people. And then you have options to change the type of alternate attack that you use. So while you have the base shoot things out of your hand, the alternative thing would be like a burst fire option, or one that you hold down to charge up a big elemental blast that then you shoot at people. That's like your primary attack ability. Then you have your defensive attack ability, which are like more special moves that might do things like there's like a vine whip that you hit, and every character that you hit, every bad guy that you hit, it does some damage and you get a portion of that health back. Or there's like a defensive ability that like creates an elemental shield in front of you that blocks incoming attacks. So you basically have two attack options. You have an offensive and defensive, and then two variations of each of those that you can use. And you can change your different spells for your two offensive and defensive attacks kind of on the fly, but it's not like a kind of game where you can like easily change them in the middle of combat to like create like huge combos and stuff. You kind of have to go into a combat encounter knowing what weapons or abilities you want to use, and then kind of use those in the encounter. But then they do this cool thing that you basically, I think there's another character in the game that by the time you get to this point, you must befriend or defeat in battle that you get their powers. So you first have your Freya powers, and then you have your I forget the name of the character, but it's basically fire powers. So you go from being a projectile elemental thing to a sword wielding fire character, and it drastically changes up your attack options. And it's really easy to switch between your two attack forms in the middle of combat. So you'll be like fighting characters with your elemental powers, your earth powers, and it might say something like ineffective on it when you're hitting it. And then you quickly switch over to your fire sword and then use your fire sword on it, and it's super effective. And it's just really easy to kind of go back and forth with that. So there's like a lot of potential with the combat. And when I first started playing it, it was a bit overwhelming because they clearly drop you in the middle of it. But yeah. I think this is one of those games that you go to a map, you find all the points on it, you get experience points, you upgrade your abilities, you get better powers, you get better things like that. That's the kind of game you're playing. In terms of its overall feel, I think it could be fun, but just coming off a game like God of War, that is a super polished version of this open world-esque action adventure game. It just does not have that overall coat of polish that makes it feel incredibly unique. I can compare it to a lot of games, but I don't think I can say what it does special on its own at this point. Mm-hmm. A lot of open world traversal, trying to get to different markers on the map, doing combat. The combat itself, when you're actually fighting enemies, it's just fine. Nothing special about it. The cool thing is that the interaction you have with your bracelet has like a soul in it that talks to you constantly. It's this old British man that talks to you. And there's some good interaction between your character and that bracelet character, much like Kratos and Mimir. Again, nothing new about this game. But the dialogue itself was just sometimes like, I feel like I like the bracelet better than the main character. Okay. The main character just seems to not be very like... Obviously, I don't think I would be happy if I was in her situation, but she's just not an endearing character that I've like drawn myself into liking yet. But again, there's no story stuff here other than a couple of moments of just, the bracelet talking to you. I think there is potential in this game, but then I ultimately don't necessarily think it's going to be anything better than something that's already out there. Would it be something I would recommend people based on my 2 hours of playing it to go out and buy day one? I think it comes out end of January. If you got nothing else to play, maybe. Sure. But it is just okay, and the combat is okay, the traversal is okay, and it could be great, but nothing about it has stood out to me as being super awesome.
How's the dialogue? Like, is it quippy? Because you remember that, like, those early trailers, it was like, oh no. That's in terms of like how it was written.
That's what the main character sounds like.
All the time?
Yeah. This is like very like angry and very like blunt and just swears without like being any reason for it. It is, I mean, she's literally, it's like the way the character is that you're sitting there, you came from modern times and you're thrown into this kind of fantasy world trying to find it out. And like, no matter what costume you wear, because there's different like, robes and stuff that you can put on, she's still like wearing her like Nike knockoffs like throughout the whole time as like her thing. And she is definitely one of those people who is like the reluctant protagonist who is just kind of like, I don't want to be here, but I have to be here, but I have to do this so I can get home the whole time. Sure. And I'm sure she'll change, but none of the dialogue is necessarily super interesting. But to be honest, the story was not the main point of the demo. So there weren't like cutscenes. It was just like a lot of tutorials, and then you running around the open world with your bracelet occasionally giving you some like, oh, we should go here. Okay, whatever. Fine.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. I might check it out if I've got time. I'm still trying to get through Callisto Protocol, but like, how long was the demo for?
So I beat the demo in about an hour because it was basically 5 objectives and then a bonus objective, which is beat this giant alligator. And then once you beat the alligator, it's like, thanks for playing, but then it like saves the game, and then you can continue just exploring the open world. And there's like some interesting stuff to do in the open world that you can like get around, and I think there's like a couple of like context clues in the map that it's like, oh, I can't do something with this yet, but I'm sure there's going to be an upgrade that I can later come back here and do that.
Sure.
And I would assume that eventually, if you get the ability to jump super high, if you get the ability to fly and glide, getting around the world could be fun. There's all these like floating rocks kind of in the sky that you can't really reach. And eventually I'm sure you would be able to like jump on top of the floating rocks to like get around the map quicker and stuff like that. They have pretty easy fast travel towers that you can go everywhere. But like, yeah, I think you could probably get all you need out of this demo in about 2 hours.
Okay, cool. I might try it. Who knows? I'm not sold on the game, so maybe the demo is what I would.
Yeah, I think the demo would be the kind of thing to know what the game is going to be or not.